Welcome to Trail Manners, the podcast so dedicated to mountain trails and running that they broadcast out of a 78 Volkswagen bus in the mountains. Who does that? Eric and Joel are your hosts and will bring you the trail life as you may have not heard it before. You hear about everything from gear reviews, nutrition to keep you upright and moving forward, and they'll even bring guests into the bus for conversations that you won't hear anywhere else. It's time for some running adventures on a higher elevation. The old 78 Volkswagen bus is fired up and headed to the mountains. Here are your hosts for Trail Manners, proudly representing the 801 with their passion and love for the trails. Eric Manning and Joel Hatch.
Hello and welcome to episode number 139 of the Trail Manners podcast. Our guests today are Jim Skaggs and Debbie Farka. The Trail Manners podcast is produced every week for enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trail Manners. This episode of the Trail Manners podcast is sponsored by Hemp Daddies Therapeutics. Hemp Daddies is a full-spectrum CBD oil made from USDA organic hemp grown on a family farm in Colorado. Hemp Daddies is great for reducing inflammation, pain relief, better sleep, and a faster recovery. Go to hempdaddies.com to support the show and learn more. And don't forget to use code TRAILCBD for 10% off plus free shipping. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get after it. All right, welcome to episode 139 of the Trail Manners podcast. We've got a couple guests on the show. Let's mix it up a little bit. We usually introduce differently, but let's go age before beauty, right? So we'll introduce Jim Skaggs.
No, I think Debbie needs to go first.
No, that was the age before beauty.
No, like younger first.
Younger first?
Sure.
I'm working on my game. Right?
Oh, okay.
So you say age before beauty, and the person you call beauty, they kind of like blush and flutter and go, oh, that was so nice.
Debbie will just smack you.
I know. But that's just it.
Violent.
But I'm working on it, right?
Oh,
So this is like a litmus test for
go.
whatever it is. But yeah, we have Debbie. She's been on the show as a co-host on the single track session. Jim's been on the show in the past as well. But as I talked about recently, this podcast is going to be dealt around coping and coming back from surgery or injury, which we've gotten right in front of me with you two. So we'll just kind of kick it off and let you guys tell your stories first of your owies, and then we can kind of get into the questions. So since we started with you, Jim, we'll start with Debbie this time.
Okay.
So there we go.
As I'm pointing at Jim to go first.
That's how this show works.
Lesson learned. So 2 years ago, I was thinking about this on my run today. 2 years ago this month was when I had my surgery. So unexpected abdominal surgery. They gutted me like a fish.
Yummy.
It was a pretty sad day when you have a fun summer, an exciting summer of running planned, and you go in and get told, no, honey, you're gonna be taking several months off. So my surgery was in April, and I was told minimum, 3 months without really doing any type of running. Otherwise, I risked hernia and all kinds of gnarliness because they sliced through my abdomen. So I had to let that heal. Deep layers of stitches had to heal, and then I needed to get my ab strength back before I could really do any significant running. And it was tough. It was harder than I thought it was going to be, both physically and emotionally. I was dealing with not only, giving up your summer of running is one thing, but when you're facing the diagnosis or the potential diagnosis that I was facing, I guess I should just tell you. Otherwise, it's going to be too cryptic,
Debbie,
and weird.
This is your story.
I know, but it'll be like cryptic and weird if I'm just like kind of tap dancing around it. And I'm not super shy about it anymore. I was
People
at the
in
time.
Istanbul are going to hear this.
Istanbul?
Yeah.
You have listeners?
Not Constantinople.
I'm going to have that song in my head now all night, you jerk.
Earworm.
Yeah, so it'll just be too cryptic and weird. So I had, I guess I'll start at the end and go back. I was diagnosed with endometrial stromal sarcoma.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Spell that with your alphabet.
Spell it, go.
I'm Googling it now.
I guess I wasn't diagnosed with that until after the surgery. But what prompted the surgery was I went in, sorry fellas that are listening, I went in just for your yearly checkup, ladies, and found out that I had a very, very large tumor in my uterus that needed to be removed. And because at the time there was a very small chance that it could be cancerous, they had to do an open surgery, which meant going through my abdomen. Which is a much more invasive way of a hysterectomy. So we went into the surgery thinking it was just, a large fibroid type tumor, and my provider, my surgeon, she wasn't super concerned about anything other than it just was too big and taking up too much room in my abdomen. And could potentially cause other problems. But then after, the pathology testing, it came back as cancerous, which I'm very, very fortunate, very lucky. I didn't need any other treatment beyond surgery. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And I'm grateful that she did the safe thing by taking it out through the abdomen rather than cutting the tumor. This is gross. Cutting the tumor into pieces and taking it out a different way. But anywho.
Like you're taking concrete out of your house, right? You cut it up into smaller pieces to get it out of the house, right?
Yeah. So
had to spin that one somewhere. That's freaking me out.
That added a layer of stress and anxiety, and I know I've talked about this with both of you guys before. Running is my Prozac. It's how I deal and cope with life. It makes me a better human overall. Makes me a better parent. A better
it's just fun to
employee.
Run with you.
Thanks. And I love it. I truly love being in the mountains. It's not just that it helps with de-stressing and all of that. I truly enjoy being out there, but. When you take away your coping mechanism and then you've added on, not only are you looking at, like I said, losing your summer of fun and running and
tanning, laying out your two-piece. That bums me out when I can't use my two-piece.
Oh, man.
I mean the two-piece. I mean the front and the back. That's my two-piece.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I totally lost my train of thought. Derailed.
No, just your summer.
Derailed.
Just your summer.
So you're facing that when you're, looking at a surgery and a lengthened recovery time, and then I added on that layer, like I said, of stress, worrying about a cancer diagnosis and what that could potentially mean. But like I said, thankfully it was just, a few weeks down the line, it was just the surgery that I needed, and I just got to recovering and dealing from there. So. Question to you.
Uh-oh.
I told my.
She's pointing at me, folks.
Yeah, Eric. I told my story. So now do I just keep talking, or is Jim going to tell his story and then you're going to ask us questions?
Boy, these are tough guests. Jim's going to talk about his story.
Okay.
And then we're going to get into the kind of recovery side of stuff.
Got it.
So part one, Debbie had her belly button cut open and had some stuff done. Now it's Jim's turn. Jim, what happened with you?
So this goes way back. So this goes back when, Eric, when you and I used to go running at lunchtime when we worked at Smith or when I worked at ATK.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. My Achilles had bugged me, and didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. Eventually it bugged me enough to where I went into a sports ortho, and he diagnosed me with, big surprise, Achilles tendinosis. And he gave me a couple exercises to do and said, it's either that or surgery. And I went, well, I don't want to get cut open. So anyway, I just dealt with it. And it bugged me off and on over the years, and I had a big knot that started to form on the back of my heel down by where the Achilles inserts into your, shall I use the technical term? Calcaneus.
So your heel.
The heel bone.
Yeah, I nailed that one.
Impressive. Somebody's been studying up on their anatomy.
I have been.
You watching Grey's Anatomy?
No.
Reruns?
No. No.
So anyway, it finally, a couple years ago, it got to the point to where the first couple of miles of just about every run were painful. It was just, and then things loosen up, and a lot of times the rest of the run would be okay. Sometimes it was painful the entire run, and I just kept going through it, just pushing through it. But really, it got to where running was drudgery. And what really, the summer before I had the surgery, I finally decided that was enough. And I have a couple of friends down in Salt Lake that are doctors. I'll drop names. Darcy Gorman she just came out and ran my 50K, and then her husband Troy is an ortho, and he specializes in ankle and Achilles. And I made an appointment with him, and with the full expectation that I was going to need surgery. And so I went in. He took x-rays, and he threw them up there, and even my untrained eye could see this massive bone spur on my heel.
Well, real quick, I saw, like, when you take your shoe off your heel.
Yeah, it was massive, wasn't it?
I could tell from a very untrained eye there was something not right there. It was creepy.
That don't look right.
Yeah, I'm like, something happened right there. That's smuggling a whole bunch. Like you had a little mandarin orange stuffed in your heel bone or something.
Right? Yeah,
a little kitty. Sucker was huge.
It was a mess.
Kind of wanted to pop it.
And, that would have hurt really bad.
Not me.
And so anyway, so I went in. This podcast is going downhill.
I think it's going
rapidly,
really well.
So anyway, when I went in for the appointment, Troy tried to make sure that surgery is what I wanted. I said, well, he says, have you done all the conservative treatments? And I said, yeah. I said, are any of those going to get rid of this bone spur? And he said, no. And I said, then fix it. So we scheduled the surgery for after I did my pacing duties at the Bear. So I was able to keep going through the summer and just, push through the pain and run Wasatch, do my 8th Wasatch, finish, pace a friend at the Bear, and then go in for surgery. And what was failed to be told to me, or what I failed to understand, was that recovering from Achilles surgery takes longer than recovering from back surgery. It's like a full year to recover adequately from it. But anyway, went in for the surgery. Everything went wonderfully. Got home. I'm hiring a kite on drugs. I come off that. I'm not in too much pain, and by the next week, my plans were to take 3 weeks off from work, go back to work, and, life goes on. 1 week after the surgery, I'm scooting around on my little knee scooter. And you know how a small pebble will stop your grocery cart in the grocery store? I hit a small pebble with my cart, with my little knee scooter, and I went flying off of it and threw all my weight on that foot and ripped everything loose that Troy had put back together the previous week. On a pain, they always ask you at the doctor or at the hospital, so on a scale of 0 to 10, what's your pain level? It was about a 12.
That's pretty high.
Oh,
ouch.
yeah. It was, it was like somebody put a blowtorch on my heel for like 5 minutes. I should probably go over what the surgery actually entailed. So basically what he did is he cut open my heel, about a 4-inch incision, detached the Achilles completely from the heel bone, cut off the bone spur with a hacksaw.
This is why
Wait,
I did.
is that
I'm
really what they use?
I'm serious. I saw an x-ray of it, and there was a shadow of a chisel, like a wood chisel, like I have at home.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, so do you use the wood chisel? And he says, yeah, we actually use that to make a notch, and then we saw.
Yeah.
This
And
is
he
why I
took
didn't
pictures.
eat before the podcast.
I had him take pictures of the surgery, too, and they're pretty gnarly.
Orthopedic surgery is kind of violent to watch.
Oh, it is.
What you had done, I've never watched, but I've seen a knee replacement and a few others, and oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's some serious heavy
I
lifting,
think Eric might
excavation.
pass
and all
out.
I'm changing
so I'll stop
colors
talking.
over here.
So anyway, he removed the bone spur. He took off a chunk of calcification off my Achilles tendon that was probably the size of my thumbnail, and then bolted the tendon back down to the heel and closed everything up and sent me home. And then a week later, I promptly ripped it loose, and 3 weeks after that, I went in and had him do it again. Yeah, that was fun. The only good thing out of having 2 surgeries is I got a 2-for-1 deal, because I had covered all my deductibles, all my copays for the entire year. With the first surgery, the second one was free.
Way to look at the silver lining.
It's like a medical Groupon. That's what it was. You got a medical Groupon.
Pretty much.
Yeah. That's how it works.
The second surgery, he was a little worried about going in just because he knew he'd have to trim up the Achilles even further, and he didn't know whether he'd have to go harvest tendon from somewhere else in my body to lengthen things out. Thankfully, he didn't have to, and everything went back together just fine, and it was basically 3 weeks on my back. I was scared to move after the second surgery. I basically laid in bed or laid in my recliner, and the only time I got up was go to the bathroom.
I would have still done it in recliner.
I didn't shower for 3 weeks, much to my wife's dismay.
TMI.
Wow, that's a good one. That's a good one. That makes me nauseous.
She was not happy with it.
Your neighbors probably weren't happy.
But once I got in the boot, then I felt much better about it. And then it was 6 weeks non-weight bearing, and then start up. I couldn't run. So the second surgery was in November. My first run was not until the first part of March. I did a whopping 1 mile on a treadmill at PT's office when he unloaded me to where I weighed about 80 pounds. That was heaven.
Weighing 80 pounds or
yes,
running?
Yes, that too.
Okay, I'm like weighing 80 pounds.
That was awesome. But I basically had to relearn how to run. I couldn't run, basically. I couldn't go out on trails or road until 5 months. I went out at about 4.5.
Rebel.
Yeah, I know.
Rule breaker.
Yeah. But once he cut me loose and told me to start running, I had to kind of relearn to run. I was hobbling down the trail, limping down the trail. But it got better and better, and by June, my mileage was back up to where it wanted to be. My whole goal after surgery was I wanted to run Wasatch 100 again the next year. And so I did it on basically 3 months of training and got my 9th finish. And it was probably my hardest finish, but got it done and was super stoked about it. And now, almost a year and a half later, the right leg where I had the surgery is still tight. I don't have the flexibility that I used to have. But and if you were to look at my legs side by side, you'd see that it's still somewhat atrophied from non-use. But I run pain-free, at least with that leg. Now, the other leg is another issue.
Well, and this podcast was kind of good timing. We came off the hills last week. We talked to Mike McKnight, and he had back surgery before he kind of really. That's how we found trails.
Bad.
Yeah. So his was really bad. He was skiing, bad ski accident, and we got the opportunity to talk to him about the recovery process, the different phases of it, right? I mean, a lot of people, when you look at stuff from the outside, you're thinking, man, that would hurt. That would suck not to, be able to run for 3 months, 2 months, whatever the time is. But there's so many levels to that. Debbie kind of pointed out a little bit as it's our stress reliever. So when you don't have that, what do you do? So I guess a question for both of you, and you can answer in different order. Mentally, I know that you kind of go into it mentally. You had, I'm pointing at Debbie, she had less time to think about it because it was kind of a spur of the moment. Jim, you kind of had time. But mentally going into your surgeries, talking with your doctors, what were some of the things that were going through your head mentally before all the rest of it started? Like, oh, man, I'm going to be out running. I know, Debbie, you had a different scare you were worried about, obviously. But what's the mental side of the recovery like? Yeah,
so, initially to go back to, that first day when, before we even really knew what we were looking at, my doctor, and I love her, by the way, ladies, her name is Chelsea Muchler. She looked at me and said, you're having a hysterectomy, and if you want to put it off until the end of the summer, you can. It's up to you. I wouldn't wait, and she said, so you think about that and let me know what you want to do. And I walked out to my car and just sobbed for probably an hour, for a lot of reasons. Surgery is scary, and yeah, I was facing losing what I wanted to do over the summer and had some fun plans that way, but I was scared and trying to figure out, okay, how do I deal with this when I'm looking at not having stress relief too? And, mentally for me, I still had about, a week and a half, 2 weeks before we actually went in for the surgery itself. So I had a little bit of time to sort of prepare myself that way. And for me, and I know that's so different for everybody, and I think we'll probably talk about that today, but I leaned on my people. I have really very close friends, and I'm very close to my mom, and I let them help me and lift me up and be my support, and just said, hey, I need to cry, I need to talk, I'm going to need you to listen to me when I want to whine or complain, and then tell me to knock it off, and help me kick myself out of that negative loop if I need it. And they were really, really great to do that, and wonderful support. And that is one of the things that I take with me all the time. I'm super grateful for those close people in my life, because I know, and I might get emotional. Oh my gosh, thanks, Jim. I'm going to blame that on you and the beer that you gave me. But like I said, I know it's different for everybody, but I know I could not have made it through the scare that I went through, and then just like not being able to run for a summer without, and I'm going to name them Kelsey, Brian, and my mom.
So this kind of goes, and it kind of goes hand in hand, is like the mental / emotional side. Eventually all this is tied together, but how hard was that, say, for you to lean on other people to that level? Because I know you're extremely a strong individual, right? You're kind of the type of person that if it needs to be done, I'll just do it,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you have to, because I feel the same way. I hate asking for help, no matter what it is,
yeah.
Right? Was that hard for you to not just ask for help, but also that fine line of, telling somebody flat out, okay, if I start whining, pump me back into shape.
Yeah.
But sometimes you want to whine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. So, they won't be mad when I say this, but, and you know both of these women very well, both of you guys do. I lovingly call them my mean friends. And when I say mean, they are the type of person that will tell you like it is, whether you want to hear it or not. They're going to love you too, and they're going to hug you, and they're going to let you cry, but they're going to tell you to knock your shit off, or they're going to tell you.
Well, they're equally as strong as you.
Oh,
and
stronger.
And not only that, but they're very practical.
Yes, and very smart.
And very smart. And, like Debbie said, Eric and I know both of these women very well. And I wouldn't hesitate to lean on them either.
Yeah.
They're the perfect people to lean on, really, if you have to have a couple of friends to lean on.
Yeah, and my mama. You guys have both met my mama, and she's the softer of the three. And I get my tender side from my mama, and so I knew which person to go to if I really just wanted to cry,
like for the mom.
Should I go to those two? Nope.
But
yeah,
it was the perfect balance.
Suck it up.
And my mom too. She's not going to let you wallow,
Yeah.
but she's your mom. She's going to hug you and love you and let you cry when you need to cry. And, all three of those ladies, to a degree, asking for help didn't need to happen. They just told me, shut up, I'm going to help you, And for me too, and Jim, you probably felt this way a little bit too, or just were forced to feel this way. Like there were certain things I just couldn't do.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't remember how many weeks now, I'd have to go look it up, but like I couldn't lift anything heavier than a gallon of milk for at least a month, if not longer. I think it was 6 weeks. I wasn't allowed to drive for a minimum of 2 weeks, just because my abs weren't strong and they weren't firing the way they were supposed to, and it's not safe for you. Your reaction time just isn't quite there. So I didn't have a choice. I was stuck home, and I needed help getting groceries. I needed help, doing laundry because I couldn't lift my laundry up and down the stairs. So I didn't have a choice, and they showed up. You show up, and this is my philosophy, you show up for the people you love the most, and I'm so fortunate to have people like that in my life that show up and tell you to, like, no, sit down, I'm going to do your laundry, and no, sit down, I'm going to cook dinner for you, and but to a degree, I was not shy about calling or texting when I just needed to talk, or when I was cleared to start like moving around more. Kelsey would come over and just say, "Come on, we're going on your granny walk," and we'd shuffle around the block a time or two, and it was just good to have, she and I run together quite a bit, and it was good to have my running buddy there, just to take my mind off of how slow I was shuffling in a hunched over position for a while. So I think it's hard for people to ask for help sometimes, but when you're forced to ask or forced to accept it, that's one thing. And just, I don't want to sound like preachy or anything, but
preach, Debbie, preach.
Preach it, girl.
But don't be afraid. If you've got those people in your life, and people are willing to do so much more than you're willing to ask them for.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So just accept it and just say thanks and be gracious and grateful for it.
How about you, Jim? Before I get too emotional listening to Debbie here, Jim, switch it up. How was that?
My situation was a little bit different in that I knew mine was a running-related injury. I had prepped for it for months. I kind of knew what I was getting into.
So you're saying you did it to yourself?
Well, I guess. The Achilles tendinosis is a fairly common runner's malady. I just read today 4 to 7% of elite runners will experience it every year.
I'm out. That's sweet. I'm saved. I'm not elite, so I'm not.
I was going to say, I don't fit that category. We're good to go.
That's why I don't try to be elite.
And since I'm far from elite, I don't know why it happened to me. Nonetheless, I didn't quite have that. Like you, Debbie, I have an incredibly difficult time asking for help. I mean, to the point where I won't even ask my wife for help. I'll just go do it myself. Well, when you're flat on your back, you have to have help. And I had to get used to my lovely wife, the saint that she is, helping me out. And me just sitting there and taking it. I guess that's the term.
Just letting her.
Yeah, just letting her help. And that's so hard to do. And I know once I got back out running or shuffling around or hiking or walking or limping down the trail, there were a lot of times for me in the months after where I was going so slow. I was busting out 15 and 16 minute miles, just
cruising,
hammering it hard, wondering if the surgery had actually been worth it. And I just had to keep telling myself that yes, it was worth it. Yes, you will get faster again. Keep plugging away. And that was probably the hardest part for me.
Well, yeah. So Jim, you run a lot, and you have for a lot of years. So it's like just part of who you are, right? So being off for that long, having that setback too with the second surgery, how was that hard for you? Just that you couldn't do something that it was almost routine for you. It's like going to the bathroom. Right?
Like I said, I had more time to prep for it, and I knew it was going to throw me, put me down for a while. So mentally, I was prepped for it. What I wasn't prepped for was the 20-pound weight gain from not doing anything.
At least you had an excuse.
I haven't weighed that much in 20 years. But, yeah, it was just, I guess it was just, it was a little easier, I guess, in that regard, that I was able to just mentally prep for it.
And you're pretty methodical, and you're kind of
right. I knew this. Yeah, I'm an engineer. I knew the science before it. I did my research. I knew what all was involved. I had talked with Ben Lewis had similar surgery a couple years earlier, and I had talked to him quite a bit. Ty had Achilles surgery similar to mine, so I had talked to him about it. and just trying to get an idea what to expect. And so I was a little bit better mentally prepared for it. The good thing, and the other thing is too, is I'm getting older, so I'm naturally going to start slowing down. And there were a lot of times, and I still think this, that crap, I'm never going to get what little bit of speed that I had back. But then I went out today and ran my fastest 5 miles in probably a year and a half.
Nice. Well, let me ask you this.
Stoked.
Well, because we're in this interesting situation. Obviously, a trail running podcast. Obviously, we're talking about injuries keeping us out right now, anyway, of running. And I've had minor injuries when we're talking about what you guys have had, right? And so I would get frustrated of not being able to run. The kind of same thing. It kind of keeps my mental clarity going. And sometimes people would look at me or say to me, "It's only running, right? It's not quote unquote life threatening. It's not. You're not bedridden forever. You didn't lose a limb."
Just tell them it might be life threatening if you don't shut up.
Life threatening for you.
Threatening for you, buddy.
But I mean, there is that side of it. So I mean, when people that aren't running or have something like this, a passion, an outlet, and they hear something like this, I mean, to them it's like, oh my gosh, you're complaining about that, and there's, they'll come up tragedy after
kids
tragedy.
starving in Africa.
Yeah,
First world problem.
Yeah, that always comes up, right?
Yeah.
But I think part of it, and I absolutely get it, right? I mean, the whole thing we just talked about. But at the end of the day, this, Debbie, you're a mother, and so running does help, right? I mean, it does help you be a better mom, be a better friend, be a better sweeper of your floor right here that I came in on, right? But I mean, it's a part of who you are, and when that gets taken away from you, whatever it is, it's a challenge, right? Because I was a soccer guy my whole life. That's all I was known for. That wasn't taken from me, but I moved away from it, and that was my identity, right? And then you talk about running, and Jim, you're known for being a runner. You're race directing and running. That's how probably most people know who you are, So when that is taken away, it is kind of I've lost something that has been it's always there for me when I need it, right?
Well, but the other thing is that once I started back running or hiking or,
Oh, I thought you meant running on your back. I'm like, God, you got to explain that one to me. What other surgery did you have?
When I got back out running, my whole attitude changed. I was just, I remember the first race I entered after my surgery. So I started running again at the end of March, and I had my first race. It was a trail half marathon down in Tooele at the end of April. So I'd been out on the trails for 3-4 weeks, and that was it. So not a lot of mileage and all that. There were only 4 people that finished behind me in that race, and I was happy as a clam.
Oh, I knew you were going to say clam. I don't know why.
No, you thought I was going to say happy as shit.
No, I was totally thinking clam.
But no, I was just thrilled to death and just stoked to be out there, even though my time was like 3 hours for a stinking half marathon. That was fairly flat. I was just, and so my whole attitude towards running just kind of shifted. I mean, I've always enjoyed it, and, of course there's times when you don't enjoy it, but overall I'm just happy to be out running. I am just, my run last night, just up on the trails right up here. I just had this big grin on my face.
Yeah.
Just because you were doing it.
I was doing it.
Doing it, yeah.
And it kind of changed my attitude. I still like to compete. No, I'm not as fast as I used to be, so what? But I'm just thrilled to death to be out there and be able to do it and hopefully do it for a while longer.
So I kind of need to echo what Jim said. So my first race back after my surgery was El Vaquero, and it was the 25K. I had wanted to do the 50K, and going into it, I wasn't even sure if I'd be able to do the 25K. I wasn't I know that race, so I know once you start, you're committed.
You're committed.
You are committed.
There is no dropping out. In that race.
And I knew it was going to be a longer day than I ever wanted it to be, but I was just so happy. Like you said.
I remember seeing you out on the trail that day.
I remember.
And big old hug, and you were just
grateful.
Glowing.
You were in your happy place.
I was.
I could tell big time.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me that after you finished the race, and it does, especially the first couple of races back. You just feel just an overwhelming sense of thankfulness and gratefulness and
joy.
And joy, yeah. I mean, and even so, my second race, I only did 2 that year, and it was the Antelope 50K. And even my loathing of the Mountain View Trail couldn't keep like the smile off my face.
Trail.
And I actually came across this picture the other day of me finishing that race, and I remember just crying and having that feeling of accomplishment that you get when you finish like your first ultra or your first distance. I kind of felt that again, and that was neat to feel that kind of sense of accomplishment after surgery. And I have to confess now, being further out, almost 2 years now, that I kind of swing back and forth a little bit, and I'm wondering if you feel this way, between feeling a sense of loss and a little bit of frustration over not being able to perform like I used to, because I'm still not there. I'm still not where I was. I came off of a really awesome running season.
Yeah, you did.
You were. You did have a good season.
And I was super looking forward to, even bettering that season before my surgery, and I'm still not there. And there's lots of contributing factors to that, not just my surgery. My job has changed, and my kids are older, and they are my world and my priority, and they're busy kiddos, and I'm not willing to sacrifice the time with them. Not that I sacrificed it before, but life was just different then. And so yeah, I kind of swing back and forth sometimes, and need to kick myself back into a more healthy perspective, and getting out there and having good runs just like you had yesterday, and just really getting back to, why do I do this? I do it because I love it. I do it because it's my happy place, it's my stress relief, and I want to keep doing it until I'm old and gray.
Yeah.
So, I mean, both of you were kind of in the same, having to be off for so long. What do you guys remember times, and maybe it's the verbiage is a little different and you can understand, but when you were going through your recovery, not running, was there ever times you questioned, like, getting back out there? I know you're both super driven, so I think this question,
no.
I already have the answer for it, but what were some of, did you have some of those areas, maybe that you weren't questioning it, but they were like, it was kind of a darker spot of your recovery, where you're kind of like, gosh, man, maybe this Certainly. Or maybe that. I mean, what was that going
Certainly.
through that
I can remember when I made my trip to the physical therapist to, I can't even
Alex.
Alex. I knew it started with an A. Couldn't even think of his name. I told him that my goal was to run Wasatch, and I said, I want you to get me there. And so he did. And he just thought that was a worthwhile goal to attend. But there were, I wouldn't call them dark places, but like I mentioned earlier, there were times when I questioned, was the surgery really worth it? Would I ever recover sufficiently to be fast enough to not chase cutoffs, if you will?
Yeah.
To be fast enough to make it more than just a hike. And ultimately, and more than once, too.
Because it almost becomes a different battle at that point. Because,
it does.
Watching you both over the past 5-6 plus years running, you're both driven, you both have had great years, and so you kind of go through that little lull, and it's like, hey, it changes your priority. It's like, okay, maybe that's not my next step to here. Like Jim's was saying, hey, I want to get to the Wasatch 100. which was in September. Your second surgery was in November, so that's a pretty short turnaround for any 100, but Wasatch is tough. But, I mean, you got to change your goals a little bit, right? So your Wasatch 100 maybe this time could have been frustrating knowing I'm going for a finish, right? Where other times you go in saying, this is my time goal. I want to go sub 30, right? That's kind of like the sexy spot of Wasatch. You got to change your mental aspect to it, but it doesn't. Yep. Some people, I don't know how well they can do that, though. Like, some people are too competitive to where, I won't say they would say, oh, it's not worth it, but maybe they would. It's like, you know what, if I can't perform at close to a sub 30, then I'm not going to run it. I'll wait another year. Yeah,
for me, like I said, I kind of swing back and forth, and I have to work on that perspective. Because
so Debbie's a swinger. We got that out there.
I just have to remind myself that, like I said before, life is very different for me now, and I don't have as much time to put into the kind of training that I know for me I need to perform like I did a few years ago. And I just have to remind myself I do it because I want to, and I go to these places and these races because I want to see these beautiful places, and I like racing. I'm not uber competitive. Some people argue with me on that, and so I'm interested in your perspective. But I
think you're more lift
you running competitive this year.
You're more lift competitive than Uber competitive.
Maybe they'll sponsor the podcast. What did you say, Jim?
This podcast is sponsored by Uber.
I'm on the wait list. Ty Draney on the wait list.
If you get in, I'm kicking your butt.
You probably will.
And the challenge has been...
Hey, Skaggs, this is the only year you'll ever be able to do that.
Yeah, whatever. I've kicked your butt before at that rate.
Guys, I'm running. El Vaquero.
You'll probably both beat me. No. If I get in, you probably will both beat me. And honestly, going into this year, I just want to finish. Like, that really, really is truly my goal. I want to finish, and I want to have fun, and I want to finish with a smile on my face.
That was my goal last year at El Vaquero. And it was my slowest one and my happiest one.
And probably your happiest one, yeah.
But is that a hard transition to make, though? Because I know a lot of people are going to be listening to the podcast, and people I've talked to about injuries and over the plethora of years are you happy with that?
I am.
Okay.
I am. And like I said, I know it's perspective for me. I know I am not willing to commit the level of time I need to commit to be running as fast as I was, which wasn't fast, FYI. Put an asterisk on that. I mean, it was fast for me.
Oh, you're fast.
And I'm okay with that because I am okay sitting at soccer games with my kiddos, and helping my kids learn how to play the guitar and learning to play the guitar myself. Like, those are priorities to me now too, and
which are maybe more important priorities.
My kids, absolutely. Yeah. So, and if I can go out and have a great day in the mountains surrounded by good friends, I'm okay with that. I am. I really, truly am. One day, though, here's the other asterisk. Like, one day, I want to get faster again, and I hope to be able to maybe throw down some really good times like I used to.
Well, we have another friend that's battled some injuries, and I had a conversation with him not too long ago, and one of the things I thought was interesting, he said to me, he's in his mind, he was like, I have no desire to run a 100-miler again, or maybe in a 50-mile because of the time. He's in a place of his life with his injuries, and he's like, I can't believe how much time you put in when you're training for 100. And it's like, I don't want to do that again. After coming back from injury, just that perspective changes, like you talk about, spending time with your kids. Everybody has that. Right. And sometimes I think, and I'm not saying injuries is a good reason for it, but you talk to a lot of people, when they get pulled away from something, they enter it with a different mindset.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, and absolutely. It's like, that's when you figure out, is it really something I love, or was it something I was doing because everybody else was doing it, my friends were doing it, it looked cool, whatever, and then you get back into it. It's, no, I love this,
Yeah.
And your perspective could change.
Gotta admit, chicks dig ultra runners.
God, I hope so.
As Debbie laughs uncontrollably.
Debbie's like, ultra runners are stupid.
Hey, I am one.
Boy, ultra runners are stupid. And I think that's interesting because you guys are definitely at one end of the spectrum. I know there's like worse injuries than what you've had, but there's a lot. For sure. But yes. I think there's many, 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 many more that are under what you guys do. A rolled ankle, plantar fasciitis, a pulled hamstring, stuff like that keep people away. You see people post on social media all the time, hey, I'm out for 3 weeks. I, rolled my ankle, right? And those 3 weeks those people are going nutty.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so I think this where we're at with you guys is these big time injuries or surgeries, time elapses, but there's a lot more out there with those. Maybe they've never had something you've gone through, but it is a rolled ankle, right? They're out 3 weeks. I mean, what kind of advice coming from months off to weeks off would you give these people that they're just frustrated?
It's just running.
Oh, geez. I mean, I would say, one of the things that I really liked about when we did our single track session was rest with purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Try to take your focus, the amount of focus that you put into training running, into recovering, and whatever that may be. Like if it's your rolled ankle, like spend an hour icing and lifting your ankle or doing the exercises your provider has told you to do, or take the amount of time that you spent running and get on the floor with your kids, or read a book, or do some of the other things that like you have put to the side because your goal or your passion is running.
Or that's where all your time went.
Or that's just where all your time went. I mean, if it's Netflixing, you haven't been able to watch your shows, like catch up on your shows and relish in it, because in a few weeks you're going to be back to doing what you like and doing what you love, and try to flip your perspective and instead of being grouchy about it, be grateful for the ability to shift your focus for a little while.
The one thing I think that in my case really helped is that you hear especially probably more elite athletes, you hear this about, but they'll get injured, that'll require surgery, they'll try and come back too fast.
Yeah.
And they'll re-injure it and their career's shot. And the one thing I would say is that if you are injured, do what your doctor, your physical therapist tells you. I did that. I mean, I listened to my physical therapist. I listened to my doctor. I pushed it a little bit, maybe, but that's just because I had goals. And I've been running long enough and know my body well enough. And that's the other thing, too. I know my body well enough to not push beyond what I think I'm capable of. And in a lot of times, I was, afterwards, I was capable of crutches down to the end of the block and back. And that was it. Mm-hmm. And I knew that was it, and that's all I could do. But the key was to listen to my body, to not ignore it, to not push beyond what my body was telling me, and to listen to my medical help. And
you did the work, right?
Yes.
You did the hard
you
work
have to do the hard
of the
work
recovery.
Of the recovery.
And sometimes that hard work is mental hard work,
yes. And it hurts sometimes. And you have to know the difference between that kind of hurt and injury kind of hurt.
Right. And I just want to jump on board with what Jim said too. I mean, my doctor looked at me and she said, do not run. Do not run. You have to listen to me. You have to rest, because I promise you will be really mad if you're back in the OR for a hernia repair, and I know
I've had one of those too.
And so I listened, and I promised her. She said, I know you, and I know how much running means to you, and I promise you will be glad if you listen to me. And I am stubborn. I'm super stubborn, but I also put that stubborn energy into recovery. Yes. And being forced patient when it comes to what I'm allowed to do, and being smart about it.
But that's got to be a hard part as well.
It's
too.
Very difficult.
Sure.
It's very difficult. And when she cleared me finally to run, she looked at me and said, "This doesn't mean 10 miles. This means a mile, and you see how you feel." And
yeah. My doctor was kind of the same way. He said, I'll let you. He says, you can start running at 5 months, or when you can do 20 single leg calf raises on that leg. And I thought, so I worked, with my physical therapist, I worked on those calf raises, and I do them every day and all that. And at my 5-month appointment, I didn't tell him that I'd already been doing little bits of running here and there for a couple of weeks. I've been out hiking. He had cut me loose to hike as much as I wanted. I just couldn't run. But I'd trot 50 yards. I'd trot 100 yards just to see
how it felt.
I didn't want to, it gets back to the being smart about it. I didn't want to sit there and go out 5 miles and, come hell or high water, I was going to do it and risk re-injuring it. But I went into my 5-month appointment at the doctor, and I said, watch this. And I did 5 of them, and that's all I could manage was 5 single-leg calf raises. And he says, you can start running.
Nice.
So I was thrilled to death. And I can't remember if I told him, well, I've already been out running. So Troy, if you're listening to this, big confession.
Busted. One of the things that, a piece of advice, Eric, that, you asked that a few minutes ago, that I would give is to find, especially if it's like a rolled ankle, sprained ankle, pulled hamstring, whatever, find a provider that you connect with that understands your passion.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up next.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
That can help you, especially if you're the kind of person that will, come hell or high water, go run, no matter how bad it hurts, or and they can really help you pull the reins back or fix it, or help you fix it in a shorter order than you would be able to than just like hanging out at home with your foot up with some ice on it or something, And that is one regret I have after my surgery, is not seeking out physical therapy help to get my body back in good running shape. I wasn't against it by any means. I didn't really think about it, and I wish I had, because my surgery was in April. I ran Vaquero in August, 25K, and then I ran the 50K. It was November, I guess. Mm-hmm. And, the winter of running, and I worked on strength. But, starting into the next season, I was struggling with some hip issues. And I knew it was from, abdominal weakness and hip weakness from my surgery for sure. And probably shouldn't have done the antelope run. I don't think my body was quite ready for it strength-wise. Mm-hmm. And I think I set myself back a little bit. And I did finally, because of the Trail Fest. Alex was at the Trail Fest, and I asked him for some help, and he kind of assessed me there because he had his table. And then he said, come in and a couple of visits, and I think we can get you on the right track. And he did. And he's my go-to still. If I tweak something funky and it's not getting better after a couple days rest or whatever, I'll call him up and make an appointment and go in and have him adjust me or tell me what I need to do to fix it. And I just, that's another, I'm getting older. I've dealt with some injuries or some surgeries, and it just recognizing again that, a little bit of help is good. Yes. And it can help you stay on track to achieve your goals.
And I think it's important, and I came across this years and years and years ago. I was having Achilles problems, and I couldn't figure it out. So the best advice I was given, this is, again, 6-7 years ago probably, was find a doctor that runs. That's all the advice I was given. Yes. I literally started calling foot doctors. Does Dr. So-and-so run? And the receptionist, excuse me? They thought, is this a prank call? But I kept calling around because I went to 2 people, and one guy said, don't run anymore. It's bad, and you need a steroid injection. The other guy said, quit running. Let's do surgery. And I'm like, there's got to be something else. I went to a running doctor, and he's like, oh, yeah, we're going to send you to A-Stem. You're going to put these. He put nitroglycerin patches for heart patients that I put on my Achilles to help the circulation quicker, because the Achilles doesn't have a lot of circulation. So he prescribed. I went to the pharmacist. Nitroglycerin patches, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, they're for my Achilles. And he's looking at me like, huh? Right? But it's important if you need a surgery, it's a knee, ankle, something, find someone that understands. Because when you say run, right, especially to a lot of listeners out there that do ultras, that's different. Like someone comes up to me, oh, you run? Yeah. So for them, it could mean, you run 10 miles a week, 12 miles a week.
3 miles a day, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important to have that, like you mentioned, that scale of a doctor. It's like, this is what I do. Like Jim mentioned, his doctor and the doctor's wife, they're ultra running, right? So
Darcy's an ultra runner.
Yep.
But Troy does a huge amount of biking, road biking. He does mountain biking. He does, what's cyclocross?
Cyclocross.
And wins his age group or wins outright. So he understands. And yes, vitally important to find a healthcare provider that does the same sport as you or realizes the importance of it to you. And I know when it came to finding a physical therapist, I had no clue. And I think I talked to you, Debbie.
You did.
And I said, I have no clue who to go to. And she said, go to Alex. He's worked on me. He's gold. And I did. And, when I told him my goals, he didn't say, that we can't do that. No. He said, okay. Let's work towards it.
Isn't it awesome to have that in your corner, though?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Not someone that tells you, I don't know if we can do that, but someone's like, let's go for it. Because it gives you that mental part of it. You know, it's like the last thing I want is someone else to tell me I can't do something, especially somebody to that degree.
Yeah.
And
right?
You know what was so fun is the week after I did Wasatch, I took my buckle and I took my plaque and I went to Alex and I just walked in and I held it up. And I said, I did it. And he was too thrilled to see that I had actually finished Wasatch.
I mean, realistically, that's why they get into it, right? Is to help people.
Yeah.
When they see you hit a goal, like especially to that level, that's
he was just tickled pink to see that I actually did it.
Yeah, and and I know there are more Alexes out there. This is just our guy, right?
Yeah, this is our go-to guy.
This is our go-to guy.
Alex Bravo.
Yes.
The Clinic Physical Therapy.
Yeah, there you go. He also will rein you in if you need to be reined in.
Yes.
He's not just going to let you go and do whatever the heck
He's not going to say,
do.
Jim, why go for Wasatch at 100? There's a 200-mile race a month later.
Right.
Yeah. No,
you should do that one.
But it is. It's just important to find somebody that, isn't going to dismiss your passion and dismiss your goals.
I've had doctors do that. I remember shortly after I started running some 30 years ago, and I was having shin splints. I had no clue what they were.
And they hurt like a SOB.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. So I go to my GP, and I explain to him what's going on. Well, how much are you running? I said, about 35 miles a week. And the first thing he says is, why are you running so much? I never went back
Running's
to him.
bad for you.
Exactly.
Running's bad for you.
I never went back to him because I thought if he's going to dismiss it, then he didn't even diagnose. He just said, well,
quit running. That's bad
don't
for
run
you.
for a couple weeks. So it's vitally important to find a doctor or healthcare provider, whomever, that understands your running and can help you with it.
And I've got a funny story with this. So everybody knows the puppy dog, right? When you're talking to a puppy and they kind of just start tilting their head from side to side, right? Because they're either confused or curious. I went to a doctor. My knee was hurting me. And I went to a doctor, and this was early on in my running, and it was probably because I was running too much, actually, too quick. And I'm like, my knee hurts. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, this past week I did 40 miles. The week before I did 35, and I was just starting to. He's like, yeah, running's bad for your knees. And I looked at him, and I literally said this to his face, and he was looking at me. I said, I don't run on my knees. And he did the puppy dog head thing. He was like tilting his head from side to side, like, I don't know what's happening. Just looking at me,
Not used to somebody questioning him.
I'm like, I don't run on my knees. And he just started tilting his head like, I can't process this. I'm going to short circuit. And that was the last time I went to him when he told me that. He's like, yeah, running's bad for your knees. I'm like, huh? What are you talking about? Yeah. I mean, I know what he meant, right? But I'm like, I don't run on my knees. And he was so confused. It was pretty awesome. All right. So with that, and I don't want to get into this, but I think it's important also to part of what we're talking about. Injuries. Jim, how old are you, Jim?
60.
So he's 60, just came off serious Achilles. Now, personally for me, I'm not 60, but I want to run when I'm 60. So when I see Jim and we have a few other friends, it's like inspiring. right? Especially coming back from what you're doing. So when you say, I've said this on the show so many times, I can't tell you, is you can't, when you look around when you're at a race, like Jim mentioned earlier, there were 6 people behind him at a race, and knowing Jim that would never happen in quote unquote real life, right? When he's healthy.
It was real life.
Yeah. But when you go to a race, I think this is what's awesome is you look around and you never know that person's story.
Right.
Yeah. It could be their first run back since back surgery or from
Right.
Achilles surgery
Absolutely.
or from being gutted like a fish, as Debbie. I mean, you just don't know what they're going through.
Right.
And so that's why, to me, it's so cool, right? It's like, I learned early on I couldn't compete against people. It wasn't fair. To them, to me, to anybody. It's like, you're not competing against them. You don't know what their training's like, what their lifestyle's like, what they're going through. And so I think a lot of times it's awesome when you do get on the trail, you're in a race, you're at a group run, and you start having that conversation just to see what people are battling, right? Whether it's an injury, whether it's life stuff, but you're all there for the same thing. And that's why I think running is so stinking inclusive with everything, right? Because the stories with you guys are telling me are just pretty sweet. And for the record, everybody here is wearing pants. So let's get that straight. Debbie made us wear pants.
Damn it.
Because of the Trail Manners podcast, pants are optional. Debbie said we couldn't come to her home without pants on. So there's that.
So disappointed.
So before we get into the Patreon questions from the Patreon folks, is there anything you guys would like to add from your experience, or also, again, I think we gave a little bit, but even for some advice, experience or advice for people out there that, and it could be, like I said, minor, it could be major, you know?
This is, I do, and I'll get on a soapbox here a little bit. I belong to a few running groups on Facebook and all that, and every once in a while somebody will post, hey, I've got this injury going on, da-da-da-da-da, what should you do? And, naturally everybody and their dog has an opinion, whether, you should, smear lemon oil on your knee or whatever, or do this or do that. And I get so frustrated. It's like, if it's that serious, go to a doctor. They are trained, they are scientists, they have the information. Don't go to Joe Blow down the street that tattoos on the side and does massage.
Ooh, that would be a sweet stop. I'm not going to lie.
If you want a massage and tattoo.
That's what I'm saying.
If you want him to fix your knee, he's not the person to go to, regardless.
Now, is there a tattoo massage place around here?
Might be.
Because I would get a membership.
But no, my advice is, if the injury is bad enough to where you think you need to go to a doctor. Go to someone who specializes in that.
And I think most of us, especially even people listening, are at a point, like Jim mentioned earlier in the podcast, you know your body.
Right.
Listen to your body. Sometimes right out of the gate, you may not be able to tell an injury versus soreness.
If you've been
right
running
out of
a couple
the gate,
years, you know.
But the next day or the day after that, like Debbie says, I'll wait a day or two. If it's not better, then she calls Alex. It's like sometimes it's not immediate, but if don't press through it thinking, oh, yeah, it's a kink, trying to mentally just check it out.
Professional.
Yeah. Yeah. My advice, something we haven't really talked about yet, is respecting the process. And yes. Ty says this all the time. It's a process. It's not linear. Coming back from whatever your injury, surgery, just an extended period of time off because life got in the way, whatever it is, respect the process. You're not going to immediately be back where you were. Understand it's going to take work. Be willing to do the work. And then be patient with yourself, you know, and
patience.
And that's very, very difficult for someone like me. I'm super impatient, and we are our own worst critic. Why can't I run like I did? You know, I've been back at training for 4 months now, and I still can't connect, 2 good runs. And that was one of those things. I remember having a conversation with Kelsey about this, that, I'd have a good run here, be a few weeks, and then I'd have another good run. But every run, just for the longest time, it just was work. It was work. It was work, and it was painful. And
been there.
I remember when I had 2 good runs in a row, and it was like magic. It's like finally. And then you start you get into that rhythm again where you start feeling better more than it's work. And
Yes.
I don't know. It's just the work pays off, and be patient. And I heard this recently that, I'm not an overly Pollyanna, life is good and optimistic and everything's great. Just have a good attitude and it'll be fine,
Sounds like you are. That was pretty sweet.
But I also try very hard not to be, that negative Nelly that's like, oh, this sucks, and why can't I? We all have those moments, but instead of glass half full, glass half empty, I'm just glad there's water in my glass, I'm just glad I get to run. So.
Yep.
Well, and I think it's really neat because everybody, I hope, I know we all do, but when you're having those days or when you're coming back, I know the first thing, and I'm probably one of the worst with this, when someone says, hey, come run with me, and I haven't run for a little bit for whatever reason. I'm pretty slow right now. It's embarrassing. You're way more fit. I think what people need to understand is they're your friends. They just want to be on the trail with you.
Yes.
Care.
You know what I mean?
We don't care.
So, and it's hard to think that way. Like, you're coming off an injury. Like, Jim's like, oh, I did it with Jim when he was coming back. He's like, well, I'm really super slow. And I'm like, I didn't care. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm on the trail with you. Either way, I'm on the trail. People will, if you're coming back and you're kind of scared to get out the door or you're nervous because of where you're at, just take someone with you.
And trust that when they come to you and say, hey, Deb, let's go for a run. Eric, let's go for a run, that they actually want you to go with them. They want to be with you.
And
if they're going out for it,
yes,
if they're going out for a tempo run or they've got a time goal or like a hard workout that they need to do, they know you aren't ready to do that. They'll go do that another time. They invited you for a reason, say yes. Just go and say yes.
Just say yes, like Nancy Reagan's always said. Just say no. She did, right? Wow, I've got those mixed up. Kids, don't listen to that. But no, I think it's important. I think everybody battles injury on some level or another. I think the first thing is listen to your body. You know it well. If it's even on the verge of something, go get it checked out. Because the last thing you want to do is be able to prevent a worse injury by being, like Debbie says, stubborn or too driven. Like and when you're coming back, set mini goals, little micro goals. Hey, this week my goal is to do 2 miles or 15-minute pace or whatever it is, or run 60%, walk 40%. But that's a good way to kind of keep that mental side, because realistically you're always going to hit those. Like Debbie said, have a great run. You get ready for your next one, like, yesterday's one was awesome. Then it's like,
3 suck.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm running in quicksand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that definitely takes
I had
place.
a great run today. Tomorrow it might just absolutely be horrible.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you are what? You're running, right?
I'm out on the trail.
And so I think that's pretty important. So I have some, as you know, I have a Patreon questions that everybody that subscribes to Patreon, most people, I tell them, hey.
This kind of scares me.
Here's what I have. I said I have Jim Skaggs, Debbie Farka coming on the show. We're talking about injuries, coming back from injuries or surgeries. What questions do you have? And we do have a few questions for you guys. And you guys should know this, but the Trail Matters people are legit. Like, they're smart, right? These are great questions. So I'm excited to ask you guys. They're good questions. You'll be able to answer them. First one, what kept you motivated on the down days of recovery? Like when you were having a down day, what kept you motivated?
Knowing that eventually I'd be back out there.
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to be a lot of hard work. I knew I was going to have to shed a fair amount of weight because when you lay on your back for 3 or 4 months or sit on your butt and you're used to going 30, 40 miles a week on average, the weight just piles on fast.
So do the bed sores at that point, right?
Well, I didn't quite have that, but
you kept moving.
But just the fact I knew it was going to be just a hell of a lot of hard work, but I knew I would be back, and that's what kept me motivated.
How about you, Debbie?
Yeah, I think just knowing that it's going to get better. And I mean, unlike Jim, where you actually couldn't physically walk, I mean, shortly after my surgery, I was allowed to walk. I was allowed to shuffle and setting those little mini goals, like, okay, I feel good enough to walk around my block today. And I was excited about that. And tomorrow I'm going to go try to walk the block twice, and sometimes you still get down and think, oh my gosh, I used to be able to run
Right,
miles
exactly.
and miles and miles and miles. But knowing that, yes, I can do this again, I will do this again, and just knowing that, like, this isn't the end of the world, and just trying to kick myself back into that perspective. And if I was really struggling with that perspective, call in my mean friends.
Yep, there you go, mean girls.
And I'd text them or call them and say, all right, help. Talk me out of this, or let's have a beer and let me whine about it for a few minutes. It just kind of goes back to your people and perspective.
Yep.
And those out there that need a people, I'm a people. Call me. I love to talk about misery. All right, next question. Okay, when you got back to running, were you ever nervous to re-injure yourself or have a setback?
Oh, hell yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, so it's been almost a year and a half since my surgery. And I know all last summer and fall and even somewhat through this winter, I worried about, twisting the ankle. You know what my big fear was last year? Just
snakes.
Falling. No, now snakes don't bother me. Falling. Just taking a tumble on the trail.
Yeah.
We all fall on the trail. We all stumble a little bit. You catch that little root that reaches up and grabs your ankle and throws you down to the ground. And I'll tell you what, I was absolutely petrified to fall. And when I finally fell, I was like, oh, that wasn't bad at all. Got up and kept right on going. And what I'm finding now, and since the right leg was weaker afterwards and didn't have the flexibility and all that, I worried, hopping over rocks and all that. And my balance when I'm on my right leg is not as good as it used to be. But what I've discovered this spring as I've gotten back out and on some dirt finally is that I'm hammering it downhill now like I used to.
It's more confident?
Yes,
kind
so
of
much more
getting
confident.
back to the not thinking.
Yeah, and it's such a good feeling. But yeah, I was absolutely paranoid to re-injure myself.
Yeah, I was scared to fall. Same thing, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. If you have twisted an ankle, you took a bad fall and cut your palms open or whatever, just those first couple runs afterwards, you're so tense, know, and you're kind of hopping over things or tiptoeing over things that normally you wouldn't even think twice about. It's, that muscle memory kicks in. I think it's the same thing after a surgery or a serious injury of any sort, and it's just practice. It's just being patient with yourself and getting out there and doing it and doing it and doing it, and then you do start to relax eventually.
Well, I remember when you and I went up Malin's that last summer, and I remember you telling me, quit favoring it. Quit favoring that leg.
Yeah.
Quit favoring it. It's like, I'm trying not to. Damn it. Leave me alone.
Leave me alone, mean friend.
Mean friend.
Yeah, mean friend.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing, right? I can't help it. Everybody has these things in their lifetime that stick with them, whatever it is, right? So my thing with the Achilles, and now when I think Jim, I think Pet Sematary.
Creepy.
Never saw that movie.
Okay,
so
it's I think about it because it's re-releasing. I think they're doing a new one on it. But if you've ever seen it, the first one, there's a little kid, and here's the backstory. And I don't care if I spoil it for anybody because it's an old show. a little boy gets hit by a car, I believe. He dies, and so they bury him in a pet cemetery because it's supposed to bring him back to life. So, and I'm paraphrasing. The boy comes back to life. He's this cute little dude, right? Like this really cute little dude. And I remember watching this show in a theater, and he had a scalpel, and he sliced someone's Achilles.
Oh, geez.
Just cut it.
Oh, crap.
Right? And
that makes me hurt.
Now Jim is squirming.
I was at a movie theater, and the rest of the show, my feet were on the chair in front of me.
Yep,
I thought the little kid was under my chair.
Yep.
So now when I think of and I've seen Achilles rupture on people playing for my soccer days right in front of me. It just pops, and then their Achilles is gone, and they're cast behind their knee. But I always think of Pet Sematary now, and then they go off and make a remake? What the hell?
I'm not watching it.
So you know what? I've just told you guys my Achilles has been bothering me for a while, and I think it's soon I saw the Pet Sematary commercial. I think that's what it is.
Psychosomatics.
Oh, man.
Roy Theater that's not there anymore. Dollar Movies, you did it to me. Anyway, well, last question from the Patreon people. Sorry on the sidekick, but now I think Achilles. I think a cute little boy's cutting me with a scalpel. Sweet dreams, manners. Okay, here we go. Last question. What did it feel like emotionally and mentally when you got back out to the trails?
We talked a little bit about that already. A little bit. It was magic.
Because I don't mean this in any, like, you're a little more emotional, right? Than say, well, anybody. No, I'm just kidding. Than say Jim, right? Like, I look at you and Jim and I think, hey, you're emotional. Jim just like, whatever, right? How was it for you emotionally?
Emotionally? So many emotions. So I'll take the El Vaquero example. The night before that race.
Oh, we had a ripper on good part.
We had a great time the night before the race. Yeah,
party.
we did. But I was a nervous mess. I mean, I am nowhere near as experienced in the amount of ultra distance races or runs that I've done compared to you two. But I feel like I had enough under my belt that going out to do a 25K or a 50K should not make me feel the way it made me feel. I mean, I was a mess the night before, and just all of those like first timer feels that you had, and
that was a mess too, but for totally different reasons.
Oh, well,
Jim got hammered.
Tied one on the night before. But going to the start line and getting out there and just seeing Ty and just taking a couple deep breaths and settling in to that first half mile before you kind of start the climb. I got okay. Yeah, you said it, you already busted me. I'm emotional, and I kind of got teary-eyed.
Which is nothing wrong with that. I'm an emotional guy.
I got up through the first like treed section when you get it, where it starts to open up into the meadows, and you can really see the flowers. Yeah. You can hear the water.
Kind of where I saw you.
Yeah, yeah. You're kind of going up that 7-mile climb or whatever it is, and just.
You were glowing.
I was. I guess I was. I had like giddy grin on my face,
yes,
and
did.
I was just loving every single step.
It made me happy to see you. Like that.
And then you think
really
back
good.
of what you went through, and
I'm here.
Not that you knew you wouldn't, but it's like, yeah, it's totally worth it. Right? It's like I came out the other side.
And for me, it wasn't really a choice, But that said, I mean, had I known that I had this tumor, and I had a choice, I don't know that I would have chosen the surgery, but afterwards just feeling just grateful that I could do what I love to do again, and feeling healthy enough to do it, and feeling strong enough, even though I wasn't as strong as I know I can be. I was like, yeah, I'm doing this, and I got this, and it was good. It's magic.
So this is probably the first time you've heard this, but when they told you, when you went in, they said you have a tumor, right? Mm-hmm. Did you just look at them and go, it's not a tumor? Did you do that at all? Like, did that ever cross your mind?
No.
Okay, because it would have crossed my mind. It's not a tumor.
Thanks, Arnold.
That's all I got. How about you, Jim? I mean, with you, you had a longer layoff. You had the double surgery. And again, compared to me and Debbie, probably me and Debbie combined, you've been doing this a lot longer, so it was more of a part of your being existence, right?
For the record, he just called you old.
No, he's just done it a lot longer.
How many times have you called me old, young lady?
A time or two.
Yeah, or 6 or 10 or 12 or 50.
But
I when I first got back out on the trails, obviously I was just walking, and it was still winter. There was still snow on the trails, and I think I was even in my boot, but I was full weight bearing. And one instance I remember is Karen and I went up 29th Street, and and I saw you up the trail, and hey, Mother Farka!
That scared me for a minute.
And it was thrilling just to see one of my friends.
Yeah.
And, I think Karen and I hiked a whopping 1.5 miles that day. And my foot got wet because I was in a boot and a sock, and the snow got underneath it and all that kind of. I was just happy.
Yeah.
And when I got to my first race in April and ran that half marathon, people are passing me like I'm,
a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I didn't care. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was just happy to be out there. It was a beautiful day. The trails were beautiful. People were nice. Life was good.
Yeah.
And life is still good. And it's, it's just the way it is.
It's part of a process.
It is.
At the end
Absolutely.
of the day. I mean, Debbie, you mentioned it's been 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you've only done a very few amount of races since it happened because, like you mentioned before, but you're out on the trails. Jim, it's been little over a year.
Yeah.
But you have a full race schedule going.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's in the rearview mirror, but I can only imagine, just from where you guys came from, that it comes up in your head sometimes more than not when you're on the trail, right? Because you missed it for so long, and now you're back out there. And even those normal days for most people, you guys are more grateful, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And think of the work
I mentioned my run yesterday. I was almost giddy up on the trail because I felt good and I was running, and it was one of my favorite trails, and the views were spectacular, and it was nice. And when we ran Zion last year, I was thrilled to death just to do 11 miles.
I remember that.
A lot of it was hiking. In fact, I think most of it was hiking.
But what's funny, and this goes back to it was you, me, and Jeff Hart.
Right.
And none of us cared.
No.
Because Jim kept saying it's going to be a hike, and me and Jeff Hart so.
Sweet.
We came across some good old boys from Louisiana.
We had a great time.
We had a blast.
And that's what it was there for. So again, I think it goes back to the thing where people don't care, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we weren't going down there to set an FKT.
No.
So it was like,
that'll never happen.
Yeah, we're just going down there to see how many beers we can drink in a weekend.
Right.
And walk them off the next day.
Right.
No, I think it's great. And, I think it's important. I mean, I appreciate both of you sharing your story, because sometimes that's not necessarily easy, especially in Debbie's case. But with the amount of running that goes on, Jim mentioned it with social media. People are asking questions all the time. You see it on there. Hey, I did this, and they circle it on the picture. This hurts right here. What do I do? It could be a million different things. But at the end of the day, if you do any amount of running, you're going to have an injury.
Yes,
you're going to fall. You're going to hurt
soft tissue,
Yeah.
broken bones. We've seen that.
Yeah.
Brian Tolbert just tore his Achilles. Jared Campbell rolled his ankle at Barclays.
I've had people break bones at my races out on Antelope Island.
Yeah, stitches and everything else. And you hear about the horrific ones, obviously, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's just
running.
It's running, but putting it in perspective, right? Not just that it's just running, but your other facets of your life. And again, why are you doing it? Now, maybe you are that elite runner, right? And you get a horrific injury, and maybe you'll never be back the same again, right? But at that point, I think it's important to say, well, why am I doing this? Was it for the sponsorships? Was it for the likes? Was it my living? There's different
was
things.
It for my ego?
Yeah, there's everything. But I think at the end of the day, it's like trail running to me is still, and I will say this, I don't care, is still one of the most purest forms of any athletics or exercise you can do.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't take much, right? And
anybody can virtually anybody can do it.
Really.
Any normal person
super inclusive, too, on
Yes.
that level. So, I don't know, these stories are just, they're inspiring to people, because I know there's a lot of people that struggle with it on different levels, and some people are harder on themselves than others, where they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, where they get super frustrated because they were supposed to do 20 reps of this, they could only do 15, or they went out for 5 and could only manage 3. But I think at the end of the day, you need to look at it as these micro goals or mini goals and say, hey, at least I'm doing it, right? And the long often debate now, is it about the racing or is it about the running, right?
Well, it's both.
Right?
Well, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think
I like to race, and I like the fact that we're going down to Zion in 2 weeks to just be endurance tourists.
Yeah, and I'll do a lot of, and I'm going to be doing a
tourists.
lot of walking. I'm going to tell you that right now.
We're going to stop and take pictures and
tie shoes a lot.
Ooh and ah and eat, and when we get done, we're going to go to the campground and drink beer.
That's right. So.
Be endurance tourists.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on. This is a show I want to do, obviously, for quite some time, talking to you both. We'll probably have more shows like this moving forward, because I think it's important. And in recent podcasts, me and Debbie talked about it. There's always that side B to every tape, album, whatever, that's not sexy. And I think injuries are definitely that part of it.
Sure.
I don't know. I got a pretty badass tattoo out of my surgery.
Yeah, let's talk about that before we leave. Jim. So his scar goes halfway up his calf.
Yes.
It's a pretty decent scar, but he went and got a tattoo of a zipper
on the scar.
On the scar, and it looks pretty cool. Did you get a zipper on your scar, Debbie?
No.
It's been a conversation starter for sure. El Vaquero last year. I'm going up the trail, and this lady just is right next to me, and she says, I see that tattoo on the back of your leg. I have to know the story. And so we spent the next mile and a half.
Is she from California?
No, she's actually a Salt Lake City runner.
Because someone said that to me last year at El Vaquero about my arm tattoo. I want to know the story. I'm like, that's creepy.
Yeah.
No, it was, and I know this lady a little bit. I mean, I know her name, and I've seen her occasionally, but the next mile and a half, I told her the story, and she's not the only one that's asked me about it.
Well, and I'll be not the first, but I will admit I didn't think you'd get it. When I look at Jim, I don't think tattoo.
Oh, I shocked.
Oh my gosh, I thought it was fake.
I knew it wasn't fake from our conversation.
Because I hadn't had a conversation with you about it, and when I saw the picture, I'm like, oh, he pulled some stock image off of Google.
I recognized the freckles on his calf.
It started out with my daughter texted me a picture of, you know how you see a dash line on packages and a little scissors that it says cut here?
Oh, yeah.
So she says, Dad, you need to get this tattoo.
That's kind of funny, too, actually.
Yeah. My lovely wife is the one that said, no, you need a zipper.
Wow. That's even better.
That shocked me.
That shocked, yeah.
And so I started researching it, and of course, we know.
So you didn't just Google zipper pictures, did you?
I did. I Googled zipper tattoos, and man, there's a ton of them out on the internet.
You didn't do that at work, did you? I can only imagine what that's going to come up. Yeah, right.
Maybe.
Zipper tattoo. Whoa. Do I got to pay for that?
But we have an ultra running friend that does tattoos, and I told him about it, and he was like, oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
I really want to go see him. I really want to go see him.
Jonesing for another tattoo?
Mm-hmm. And I've already got it, but I want to go to him.
You know, I kind of am, too.
But I don't know him as well as you guys. I know him, but we're not. Yeah, so I want to go to him though. For that, I like his stuff.
Yeah, he does good work.
He does a good job.
Does good work. Yeah, I'm thinking another tattoo maybe.
You're thinking about something like I don't know, a skull, snake riding a motorcycle.
No, I'm thinking like
pirate,
a nice buffalo head right on my shoulder.
Right on your shoulder.
Yeah.
I could see that. That's kind of your jam.
Yeah.
What are you gonna get?
An aspen leaf.
Nice.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, for my daughter. I've got a bunch already picked out. She's on board.
That.
Yeah.
I love that.
Cool little aspen leaf.
Yeah.
And then a snake riding a motorcycle. Because that's just badass.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm going to put that on Tinder.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my
That'll be my Tinder shot, snake with a motorcycle.
Oh, they always get weird.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. We'll definitely have you guys back on for different reasons. Jim, we're going to have back on talking about race directing. Probably a single track session. Debbie, you were hit. Downloaded like crazy. We'll get you back on a single track session.
Anytime. That was so much fun.
But yeah, thanks for taking the time on a Friday night to be on the podcast, and appreciate you guys sharing your story. And I hope people out there, if you have questions, definitely send me an email, manners@trailmanners.com. But thanks for listening to the podcast. Jim, Debbie, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having us.
All right, and we are out of here. Thank you for listening to the Trail Manners podcast. I'd like to thank Debbie Farka and Jim Skaggs for joining me today. I also want to encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Trail Manners, or you can swing by our website, check out our store page, or hit us up on the contact page. Let us know what you want to see, who you want to hear, or if you would like to be on the show. We'd also love support via our Patreon account at patreon.com/trailmanners. Until next time, this is Eric Manning reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.